Hello everybody, this is Manu S and welcome to another Eternal Brews video series. Today I got a pretty sweet and I think interesting brew for you that I have been playing for a bit. Some might have seen me play it on stream. That also seemed to have quite a lot of potential actually, but to be not quite there, like the deck sort of missing something. Maybe it's gonna be better with more cards being released, but the core of the deck, the core strategy of the deck is quite appealing. It just lacks a bit of consistency and some elements, I would say. But some of its matchups are just like ridiculously good. Okay, so let's take a look. The deck is basically a sort of grindy late game mid-range deck that is built around the 8 horns, sort of Shepherd's Horn and Flamestoker. So a lot of horn blowing going on in the games, often sounding the opponent's impending doom. Alright, so let's talk about the cards in the deck. So first off, we have a lot of the typical like Praxis mid-range cards you would see. We have 4 Initiate of the Sands to speed things up. Turn 1 Initiate into turn 2. Shepherd's Horn is a pretty nice speed up in a lot of cases, or simply just Dawnwalker on turn 2 is also pretty nice. And of course Titan on 4. Also it synergizes well with the Xenan Obelisk and lets us accelerate in the sort of slow Flamestoker a turn earlier, which is also pretty relevant. Then we have 4 Temple Scribe in a deck that mostly just tries to find certain cards and buy itself time to set up. Temple Scribe is the perfect 2-drop and also great synergy with Obelisk once again. Then we have for Ember Acolyte, similar reason, good synergy with Obelisk, lets us set up our power, lets us trade with some small stuff that is pressuring us and generate some extra value. Then Dawnwalker, for multiple reasons, has great synergy with Horn, gaining us 3 health when we play it and making it cheaper. We also gain 3 health every time we return it from the void to play. And yeah, there's a bunch of cards that trigger it. And the usual Sandstorm Titan, but also some Shatterglass mages, and most importantly, it synergizes really well with Flamestoker, because Flamestoker brings back all Dawnwalkers each turn, and gaining a 3 health per Dawnwalker per Shepherd's Horn, making it really hard to die in the late game. Then we have for Sandstorm Titan, you can hardly play a time deck that is not super dedicated to, say, a specific control plan like Chalice without putting Titan in the deck. It's great with the acceleration, it's great with Dawnwalker, it's great at buying us time and stabilizing, and even great at attacking against decks that don't have enough board to stop it. And then we have 2 Shatterglass Mage. I wouldn't mind fitting more, especially because it's a turn 4 play in this deck with Horn, and it gains us 3 health, and it has nice value, but I needed to fit other cards too, so I decided to stick with 2 for now, since I just couldn't really fit more. But I would definitely run like more in the sideboard in a deck like this. And that's it for the units. Let's talk about the rest. For Torch, pretty self-explanatory. If you're on fire, you basically start your deck with 4 Torch. Then we have 2 Xenan Initiation. Great with Dawnwalker, especially if we can bring them back a lot. Still good with Titan and Shatterglass Mage. And also pretty nice with the Flamestoker Infernus to have like a free, basically 6 power killer attack for that turn. So there's plenty of ways to use it to set it up. Sorry about that. Then we have the 4 Shepherd's Horn that I mentioned. Just another great way of accelerating in some of the things. Keep in mind it's overwhelm cards, not only units. So Obliterate costs 1 less and gains 3 health, which is a pretty big deal actually. Turn 3 Horn, turn 4 Obliterate. Comes up quite a bunch. Well, the Infernuses gain you 3 health every turn and deal 5 to the opponent basically. And even cards like Stonescar Maul become cheaper, which actually makes the usually otherwise more of a limited card into a pretty good card in this deck, because once it basically is a 6/6, is like a 6/3 weapon that gains you 3 health and only costs 5, it becomes much more appealing. And then yeah, we have the 4 Obelisk, just sort of to make sure that our Infernuses aren't stalled at some point, like 5/5 get stalled by a bunch, including Titan, so making them 6/6s or 7/7s means they usually cannot be blocked without trading, and the longer the game goes, the deck can sometimes go really long. You draw more Obelisks and the Infernuses keep growing, so the opponent can never stall them out, which is very important to keep the inevitability that Horn plus Stoker can provide in the long run. And Obelisk makes sure the inevitability remains, basically. Then we have 4 Obliterate, great removal, gets cheaper with every horn you have, and gains you a bunch of health back. The amount of health the deck can get is pretty impressive. Like, some decks simply just lose to the life gain from the health gain from horn alone. Then we have the other key card in the deck for Flamestoker, the top end strat. The deck completely obliterates most mid-range and control decks. Been very impressed by what it does. The deck just could be more consistent. This deck, as you might have seen in one of my highlights, basically just obliterates Chalice in most games because they cannot keep up with the late game inevitability of this deck and eventually just crumble under the pressure of Horns, Stokers and Obelisks. And last but not least, we have the 2 Stonescar Mauls that I mentioned. It's another decent removal. I wanted some more ways to interact with opposing units. For example, if they have a bigger unit that stalls the Infernuses, you can just attack, they block the Infernus, and then use Stonescar Maul to finish it off or obliterate. Just having a few more ways to proactively deal with stuff is nice. We have like 8 removal between Maul, Initiation, and Obliterate, and 4 Torch for smaller stuff, basically. And Initiation plus Dawnwalker can provide repetitive removal. I could even see fitting like a 3rd scene initiation somehow. I just wouldn't really know how right now. At that point you would have probably have to consider giving up on the Mauls, so not sure if that's worth it. But it's an option. Like, you could cut the Mauls, maybe add like a Shatterglass Mage and Initiation, for example, or even just try running 4 Initiation. But it's nice that Maul can gain you health, and it's also another nice threat against decks sometimes, and also has the potential to 2-for-1 opponents. Killing like a small thing, protecting it with blockers, and then killing a big thing the turn after, and so on. Just has been pretty decent. And this is sort of a unit as well in the deck that I didn't mention earlier, because the deck runs quite a lot of power, and the monuments having Overwhelm means they also gain you 3 health, and can get back Dawnwalkers. The fact that Horn makes them cheaper only matters to do multiple things in a turn, because you still need to hit 5 power to be able to play them as a Reinhardt, so it will only allow you to do like Amber, Monument plus something else in a turn that you normally couldn't, but it won't allow you to play Amber, Monument a turn earlier. But that is not very important. And yeah, it's just another decent body to lock up the ground or to grind out control decks and stuff. So the deck has 29 power, plus 4 Initiate and 4 Amber Acolyte, and basically running Amber Monument in a slot where you normally would run Talia's Favorite in a deck like this, since the deck doesn't need that much power at the top end. At some point wants to hit 8 for Obelisk, and Monument just fits the strategy much better than Favorite, and it's another nice way to fit in some extra beefy bodies to stabilize the board without wasting precious slots that we need for other cards. So it's a really good double duty card here. And yeah, then we have the 12 duels, split of sigils, leaning towards time to have at least 15 for Initiate. 16 would be optimal, but I don't think we can support 16. We need a reasonable amount of fire for our 2-cost fire cards, and to eventually hit 3 fire with the help of Amber Acolyte, basically. So try to use these on fire wherever you can. And yeah, that's about it for the deck for now. I played the deck my fair share on ladder and mostly on stream even, and it's a lot of fun and actually surprisingly competitive, just not as consistent as I would like it to be. Like I went on some really sweet win streaks with it and had mostly positive records or 5-5 runs over like 10 game sets that I often do on stream, and some people picked it up that watched my stream and played it and had pretty good results with it. But yeah, it's still a bit a diamond in the rough and maybe a couple of cards short, and can have issues with certain matchups. Like some of the aggressive matchups can be very iffy. Like sure, you can always beat Skycrack with a deck that has Titans, but yeah, what do you do if you don't draw your Titans? You probably just lose. Like the deck is pretty dependent on Titan and Horn, for example, against aggressive decks. And if you don't draw either or draw a Horn with without enough stuff to support it and survive, or they have a good answer to your first Titan and that's it, you might just die. I have just felt, after having played the deck a sufficient amount, that the deck is not quite good enough to clearly recommend it as like a deck to happily take to ladder, but the deck has definitely been pretty impressive and has a lot of potential, so don't be afraid to try it out if you find it interesting or fun and want to give it a try. It's not gonna like just lose all the time. It is definitely capable of winning more than losing, but it's not a top tier deck yet, at least, unfortunately. Alright, that's it for the deck and what I have to say about it. As usual, I'm gonna hop into some games and show it in action and see how it's gonna do for us today and show you how much fun it is to play. Thanks for watching, stay tuned for the first half of the games coming up in a moment.